Later. Ooh, welcome to another episode of the Cover One Film Room. I am one of your three hosts, Anthony Prohaska, joined tonight by Mr. Erik Turner, Mr. Kendall Mirsky. Erik, we got a fun episode planned tonight. How excited are you for someone who's really grown on you over the last several weeks as you dove into the film?
Yeah, this is, linebackers, Terrel Bernard from Baylor. Linebackers are my favorite position to study.
Tell people why. You say that a lot on Twitter, but tell people why you like it.
Well, first of all, it was one of the first positions aside from quarterback that I studied at the Scouting Academy.
Okay.
But linebackers are just so much fun because they're involved in every play, whether you see it or not. They're involved as rushers, they're involved as run defenders, they're involved in the passing game. So they're kind of that gel between the front and back end, and their job's really important. And even if they're not making stats and showing in the box score, you can get so much from watching them on film. And it's just always, I don't know why, I just naturally liked the linebacker position.
Very fair. And then, talk about Terrel Bernard, someone who obviously plays that linebacker position. So you've already got a position grouping that you like to scout, and then someone who, like I mentioned a little bit ago, has started to grow on you as you dove into the tape post-draft.
Yeah, early on, obviously at the draft, I was like, what? A linebacker?
Yep.
Right, in the third round, like, what?
With Dylan Parham there? What?
Right, with those interior offensive linemen on the board, and obviously several other positions where the Bills could have drafted to maybe make a little more of an impact. But, once he played, you realize he played at Baylor. He played for Dave Aranda. McDermott says he said the other day, when Aranda speaks, he listens. And I feel the same way. I mean, obviously, I did a few years back, I did this Inner Circle article about right around draft time. And it really focused on Dave Aranda and some other guys that McDermott and some of his staff are close to. And each year after that, it seems like there's some kind of connection between Aranda, even as he's moved to different schools, and Sean McDermott. So I just love watching his defense too, because it's so detail oriented. And really, Dave Aranda, go YouTube him after the show. He is Sean McDermott Jr.
That's funny. He's a guy who I feel like he ticks so many boxes for people now, like with even going back to his work at Wisconsin and then LSU and now with Baylor, and what he's been able to do in the track record of success that he's had in each program against a variety of offenses and a variety of different conferences, and what he's able to do and what he's able to build. So it makes sense that someone of his caliber has, Sean McDermott's ear. And like you said, I think when Aranda speaks, a lot of people listen. Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane were two of those people, obviously, with their selection of Terrel Bernard. And Kendall, for you, you and I, we were part of the draft coverage on night 2 when the Bills took Terrel Bernard. And then you and I did that immediate breakdown right after for that Saturday morning on Bernard and Cook. And, now the dust has settled further. We've dove into so many games and so many clips in preparation just for our knowledge as a whole, but especially for this episode. How are you feeling, now? I know we both initially, much like Erik, live on draft night, even the day after, we're just like, what? And then it was like, okay, well, like, there's some things. Let's see how it fits. Give it time to breathe and see where we are. Where are you now as we sit down for this episode on Terrel Bernard?
I feel like the best way to put it is I'm just in a better headspace about it. Like, right off the bat, like you said, it was just the only thing I could think about was Dylan Parham. That was the only thing
I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah, it's just he goes the pick right after, and it stings so much. But he's just a fun player to watch on tape. Yeah. There's so many fun moments on tape with him. And immediately when he was drafted, it really wasn't about the player itself. It wasn't who was selected. It was the position group that was selected, and how is this guy going to get on the field? And that's still my prevailing thought with Bernard. It's not like any sort of indictment on him as the player. It's just, it's difficult to get a third linebacker on the field with the scheme that the Bills use on defense. So that's really my prevailing thought with all of this. But after watching, games and games of tape from this past year, I feel better about the pick. Yeah. I don't know if that's necessarily like a high bar to clear or anything, because I was pretty upset. But
you were so low, so any positivity was going to put you above.
He's here, so whatever. You gotta
I'm rooting for him now. But no, I do feel better though. Like, it is it's above par for the course, if that makes any sense. Like, like I'm not negatively thinking about it. I'm trending more in the positive direction about thinking about it. But that opportunity cost of Dylan Parham's still like in the back of my mind, and it's still rattling me.
Yeah, that's going to be the big one. Like I was fine on the player as a whole, even on like not as a whole, but on draft night, much more than I was the position grouping or the selection. And I'm still even in my head too with like, okay, would they have taken Nakobe Dean if he was still there? And then I'm like, no, I don't even want to get in that headspace. Like all these different questions. And yeah, the opportunity cost is a good way to put it. But, in preparation for this episode, obviously, the three of us are very familiar with Bernard in just from the immediate post-draft prep and the process leading up to it, but then even more so coming into this episode. And the more we dove into the Bernard tape, the more the idea of him as a matchup linebacker came to be with his skill set, with his traits, with, as Jason points out here, him being Milano-like. And then again, that question still comes into his fit in 2022, his fit in the future. What is his path to the field? What does it look like for him to be able to get onto the field? But again, he's got all these positive traits and qualities physically, mentally, all those kinds of things. So Erik, to kick it to you here, what are your thoughts and how do we really start to dive in here when it comes to Terrel Bernard as, that matchup linebacker that he seems to have a natural ability to kind of fall into?
Yeah, it's funny because on playerprofiler.com, Milano is actually a comp for Bernard. But then when you pop on the film and you see all these splash plays, these tackle for losses, these run stops, his ability in coverage, his ability as a rusher, as someone said in the chat, like he's what I called a triple threat in the article I did last week because he can do it on, so many different things. He's so versatile. And so he is very much like Milano. I agree with that. He can play man-to-man. He can play zone. He can match up versus tight ends, running backs, and wide receivers, stop the run at the point of attack, but also sideline to sideline. He's got a motor. He hustles, plays through the whistle a lot of the time. A leader, according to Dave Aranda, a leader on and off the field. And then again, that rushing the passer element, so much like you heard Bob Babich when he was here talk about Milano as a matchup linebacker, as Anthony was just talking about. But most people just think that's in coverage. No, matchup linebacker is, hey, I want to exploit a mismatch in pass blocking. I want to get a running back matched up with my linebacker based on and scheming that up, something Dave Aranda does better than anyone, and Ron Roberts at Baylor. And we're going to dive into some of that film. I want to get him matched up. I want to get Milano matched up or Bernard matched up versus a running back, which we see a lot on those simulated pressures, those creeper pressures, and they're able to exploit those and win versus running back. So it's not just about coverage when you're talking matchup linebacker. The ability to stop the run, the ability to play, pass coverage, but also rush the quarterback are all things that Terrel Bernard has. And the more reps he gets, especially early on in his career, I think he can be weaponized in the very same way that Matt Milano is.
Oh, and that's, for somebody who he's come under criticism at times, but I think a large majority of Bills Mafia recognizes how important Matt Milano has been to this defense and the level that he's produced at and the quality of player that he is. And if you're getting a Milano-esque player, that's just a huge feather in the cap for the Buffalo Bills and for their scouting staff and GM staff. And, Kendall, the matchup piece, I know a piece that you're focused on when it comes to that matchup piece is the 12 personnel aspect, something that, we've talked about this offseason when it comes to the Bills offense with the addition of OJ Howard. And so it's like, oh my goodness, Howard and Knox. But we flip it to the defensive side where when teams go 12 personnel, you have to be able to have the horses to match up with that kind of package. What does Bernard do for you when it comes to opposing offenses going 12 personnel against the Bills? How do you think he fits in and what excites you about that possibility?
Well, I think it's exciting because I feel like in the past, while Klein did some great stuff for the Bills in spot duty, I think I don't want to say right away he's an immediate upgrade, but he's got potential to be an immediate upgrade and a lot more excitement factor, let's be honest. And I think the big thing really for me is, like you said, matching up with teams that are going to get heavy. And we're playing teams that are going to get heavy this year. We're talking about the Ravens, the Browns, the Patriots, the Steelers, maybe. There's way more to even mention. The Packers, there's tons of teams that like to go out in 12 personnel, and we're going to have to match up with them. And that being said, we can still do that with Teron Johnson. but it's putting a stretch on the scheme. You know, Teron Johnson is someone who can absolutely fit the run. We've seen it time and time and time again. But when you switch out Teron Johnson for Bernard, you're getting someone who gives you a little bit more in run stopping. You're getting someone who gives you a little bit more as a blitzer. You might be losing a little bit in coverage, but you're not losing as much as you were when you were switching from Teron Johnson to AJ Klein. So I think that's the big excitement for me. It's the ability to get heavier on defense and match up with those 12 personnel teams, but also not sacrificing too much in pass coverage if they decide to pass out of those 12 personnel looks. And if they flex out one of those 2 tight ends, Bernard can match up with him like we just covered.
He fits well into my rock, paper, scissors philosophy that I've been going with this entire offseason of getting guys who allow you to throw rock, paper, and scissors to be able to stay multiple. He is a triple threat. He's rock, paper, and scissors all in one nice little linebacker package. You know, you get somebody who allows you to stay versatile, stay multiple, stay fluid. And, you know, again, that point there, when you subbed in AJ Klein for Taron Johnson, you obviously got a big boost in the run support piece, but you took a hit in pass coverage. And I don't think that's a secret for anyone. But with Bernard, you get that run support piece in a variety of ways. But again, there's not that huge drop off in coverage. And there's even part of a, you know, utility aspect to it of getting him to match up against bigger bodied opponents, whether it's, you know, power slot, big slot receivers, or big tight ends, and using him as kind of like that big nickel or Buffalo nickel type role. And you add it in with so many of the things that are said about him. Several quotes from Brandon Beane from his post-draft presser that still stick in my head about Bernard, or him saying that he's smart and instinctual, and it's hard to keep guys like that off the field. He's athletic. He's versatile. He can play inside out. He's quick in the box. He's got that short speed. We like his ability to match up in the passing game. He's got a knack for blitzing. He can play inside. He can play out. He's super smart, super instinctual. You keep hearing these buzzwords about like the intangibles that he has and what he brings from a skill set and trade perspective. And then you see it legitimately flash on film, and you not only see it flash, but you see it flash consistently. And there's a lot to like when you really start to break his game down. And Erik, you know, obviously I know there's some things that you like about Bernard as well that I know you want to touch on before we dive into the film.
I'm glad you brought up the role that Klein had as the backup linebacker, filling in from time to time, and how, you know, the defense had to change a little bit when he was in because of his lack of ability in coverage. But I will say, like, he was a very good blitzer. He was a good rusher. And he played decent in zone coverage, got his hands up a bunch of times on some play action passes that led to some turnovers. But they were not able to man up against other teams, against offenses when they wanted to, when Klein was in. And that's one thing that I think Bernard could possibly open up if the Bills play a little more base defense and have 3 linebackers on the field, and maybe treat him as, you know, that big nickel, or again, either way, that third linebacker on the field. Is he has the ability to match up versus tight ends and running backs, but also to match up in man coverage over the slot. And he does such a good job, and we're going to see some of this on film, of not panicking when he's in man coverage in that trail technique, when he's running down the field, watching that receiver, tight end, running down the field with him and just mirroring his every move. He's got he's got help over the top from a safety. Like, he doesn't panic when he's in man coverage, as you'll see on film tonight. And so I think that'll allow the Bills to play some different coverages, to your point, Ant, you know, diversify their coverages a little bit. You know, in the past, we talked about it prior to going live. In the past, the Bills have been a quarters team, you know, minimize those deep plays, but more of a zone-based quarters team. Well, when you have a guy like Bernard in there and in those 3 linebacker sets, the Bills can go ahead and play, you know, quarters, but more of a man quarters. Well, hey, if this number 2 wide receiver in the slot over Bernard, if he runs vertically and gets past linebacker level, that linebacker is not passing him on to the safety. He's carrying him vertically. And that's what you saw on film from Bernard week in and week out at Baylor under Dave Aranda and Ron Roberts.
And that's such a huge piece, right? Like, in Erik, like you said, like that versatility piece, you don't have to be as rigid in your rules. You get more adaptability, more flexibility. You can have multiple options depending on personnel or formation. And then based on what happens post snap, you don't have to worry about, we're deficient in this area or we're vulnerable in this area. And then you don't have to deal with having to overcompensate for that vulnerability in order to protect it. And I think that's, you know, I think we've all touched on in a variety of ways. That's something to really appreciated when it comes to Terrel Bernard, and just one of the many things that we're going to show you guys as we now dive into the film. And also, just as a precursor, I don't know how many people know, we've got footage of Bernard from multiple years. So before he was number 2 this past year in 2021, he wore number 26. So I know we have him highlighted, but just in case people don't, people are like, wait a minute, where's Bernard? All I see is 26.
That's not him.
That is Terrel Bernard.
Yeah. And so this first clip, number 26 here. And if this doesn't remind you of Matt Milano, I don't know what you're watching, honestly, because you're going to see him fire his gun. And Anthony and Kendall, and this is something we're going to talk about all night, especially versus the run, his ability to see out in front of traffic, his ability to process run schemes. You see him fire his gun right there on that perimeter run, on that outside run to the left side of the screen. I just love how he's able to process these runs. So on the snap, he sees all of these guys zone blocking this way, right? And that his defender in front of him, his defensive tackle, DN right here, he's going to slant inside, and it's a gap exchange. And so that's going to give him a nice opening right here. So one thing that we're going to see on film a lot from him is he understands which guy he needs to beat, out of these combo blocks. And his guy in front of him does a great job of occupying the offensive lineman. He's able to run clean, which obviously for a guy with his speed and processing really works out for him, because he doesn't have the most physicality, the longest arms to defeat blocks head on. But this type of play right here is right up his alley. He's able to fire his gun just like Matt Milano.
Yeah, I think the key with this is everything has to do with the processing component, because you hit it home perfectly. He's not an overly physical guy. He's undersized to an extent, so he has to win in ways that mitigate those deficiencies. And when you process fast, you play fast, and you see that. He isn't necessarily the fastest sideline to sideline guy, but when you get a half a step from your processing, you make up for any that lost. And you hit it home perfectly when you were talking about how he identifies that combo block from the right tackle and the right guard, and he understands who he has to beat. And then he sees 47 and 81 going to double number 2 there, fires his gun so quick, gets in the backfield, gets that TFL. This is not something that we're just showing as a highlight. This is something that shows up regularly. Him getting into the backfield quickly, firing his gun because he understands where the run gaps are, what's opening up quickly, what he needs to be patient with. He has a very, very sound understanding of when to shoot gaps, when to be patient, when to fit the run.
And Anthony, I'll throw this one to you. This, again, he's not really the biggest guy, the strongest guy, but his processing is great. And while this play is him stacking and shedding here, he's number 2 off the right side here. Again, he processes this run. Number 90, again, slants inside to disrupt the blocking scheme. But watch how he looks out in front of that guy. He realizes, okay, I'm going to have to beat the tackle on this play, and I'm going to do it by stack and shedding. Again, maybe not his strong suit, but if you watch the technique and placement, it's really well. Pokes his head in the gap outside, uses his leverage to throw that guy, and then go make the tackle, Anthony.
Yeah, the key word there for me is leverage, similar to the play before that we just showed, where he understood the leverage of the blocking scheme and how he could knife in underneath to make the play. He operates in that way, whether it's coverage, whether it's run fits, whether it's taking on blocks. He understands leverage, whether it's, getting out in front of a play or getting in behind it, or in this play, being able to attack a shoulder, get his head in that outside gap. And then, like you said, the stack and shed is absolutely beautiful here. You see him get low. You see, boom, highlight the head placement there. So for those who don't know, he's got his head in that outside gap, which is his gap. But because of how he engages the lineman and gets his arms extended, he's then able to also play in the inside gap once he reads the cut of the running back. So he's got his head and his body, the right side of his body, in that outside gap. He sees the running back cut it up inside. So what does he do? He sheds. He then goes inside and he makes a tackle on this play. Again, like you mentioned, Erik, that's not something he does a ton because of his size. He is more of an undersized guy, but it's nice to see that he has it in his game. One of the things that I've been so impressed with when we watch the tape is his ability to avoid blockers in a variety of ways in the box and around the line of scrimmage. You'll see him juke out a pulling guard and make a play, not because he's not physical, but because he understands what his strengths are and what his weaknesses are, and he understands how to play to the strengths and mitigate the weaknesses. And this one is, again, an area that he has to continue to improve on because of his stature, but it's nice to know that he potentially has it in the arsenal. And when you put it, Erik, like you said, with that mental side, it's just really nice to see and watch him process in real time and understand, here's the play, here's my assignment. Okay, I'm reading it in live time, boom, bang, execute, like all in one motion. Real sweet there.
Yeah, and I talked about his ability to process the blocking in front of him. That's half the battle when you're talking about an undersized linebacker like Bernard or Matt Milano. You got to be half a click faster from the shoulders up in order to make plays. And here's a play against Ole Miss that he does a very similar thing. He gets a zone run to his left. He's the stacked linebacker here. Center and right guard are working on a combination block together, and he realizes that the center is looking to overtake his defensive tackle number 54, which means that the right guard is going to peel off and have to pick up Bernard. Watch how he leverages the ball down the line of scrimmage, but then realizes, okay, that guy's going to try to take a good angle to me. And so how is Bernard going to beat that? What does he do? He does what I call shaving angles. He realized, okay, I'm not going to be able to go through him with power. I'm not going to be able to use my hands on this play. He's got a good angle on me. I need to use my quickness, my lateral agility, and then shave angles. Watch him avoid this block. This is his moneymaker, his ability to shave angle and avoid the block. Linebackers win in several different ways. Some linebackers are stack and shed guys like you saw in the last play. He's not really that. Some guys win with their processing. He's more of that. But he definitely is a guy that likes to avoid blocks, which isn't a knock nowadays. It isn't a bad thing. Look at him avoid that block, get under it, and then he's able to hit the running back there. Just a great job processing the scheme, processing the blocking, leveraging the ball, avoiding the block, and then making the tackle in the box.
Yeah, ultimately, I think it does all come back to that processing because, like you said, if you are undersized, if you aren't all that physical, you need to find ways to mitigate for that. And being a half a step faster, he allows himself to beat that angle. He gives himself the chance to even beat the aiming point of that climbing right guard to the second level. And like you said, and this ties back to what Anthony was saying on the last play. I mean, yeah, it's not his strength to stack and shed, but he can do it. This is his bread and butter. This is him through and through, the agility, the lateral quickness in the box, being able to identify those blocks with quick processing, but then also the ability and the agility to get around that block quickly, be stout enough at the point of attack because he's completely disrupting angles in that way, and then making the tackle on the football. This is why you see so many splash plays from him, because he can process the offensive line, the blocking from it, but then also couple it with athleticism at the second level to defeat the blocking on top of the processing in the first hand.
The way he attacked that shoulder for me, Erik, it's almost like he's an edge rusher creating a soft edge and then attacking, like playing that kind of half-man relationship a little bit and attacking the shoulder. And he does that regularly. And I think that's a real strong side of like functional football IQ and functional playing intelligence.
Yeah, he just steps through that again, shaves that angle. Just such a nice play and something that we see from Milano all the time. So those are some of the run plays. Again, he's more of a guy that's going to try to evade those blocks, uses his processing and football IQ to beat the blocks and get out in front of the runner. But we want to dive into, who he played for, Dave Aranda and Ron Roberts. And so we got some coaching film. It was from a Dave Aranda film session when he was with Wisconsin. He was a defensive coordinator there. But I feel like this short clip of him breaking down this play and how he used Terrel Bernard at Baylor, and how he used guys like Joe Schober, and you'll see some of the names that he throws out here. I don't want to give too much away, but how he uses them as a matchup linebacker, as a pass rusher, because for defenses, it's not just about reacting to what the offense is doing. You're trying to be aggressive. You're trying to dictate, as Anthony always says. And so one of the ways to do that is to get one-on-ones for specific players on your defense. And we're going to show you this clip of Aranda at Wisconsin, how he got a nice run through for his linebacker matched up against the running back as a pass rusher. And then we're going to show you Terrel Bernard executing some of the same plays and techniques in order to get that one-on-one with a running back.
A lot of people that we play will put their center to the field. So the center will ID this linebacker here to the field. So that's who they're going to block. The guard is blocking this defensive tackle. The tackle is blocking this defensive end. So it's these three for these three. And it's these three for these three. We want to try to maximize that matchup on that matchup. So much of it is we're not overloading. We're trying to get matchups, trying to get one-on-ones, and let's win the one-on-ones.
So you have the speed rush on the offensive tackle, which favors you because a linebacker is going to be faster than an offensive tackle.
Right.
You have the power rush for the linebacker, which favors him because he has a running start.
Correct.
And it's all created because you have 4 offensive linemen blocking 2.
That's it.
That's the uniqueness of what you're doing.
See, I just love this, Anthony. It's something we're going to break down here in a few plays, but I mean, we talk about this all the time, right, Anthony? We talk about simulated pressures and creeper pressures. So you got 4 on the line of scrimmage. And what ends up happening is, they send this guy and drop a guy out. So it's still 4 rushers, but it's which 4 are coming and which mismatch or what matchup can they exploit. And this one, it was this rusher right here versus the running back. And it's something that Baylor, again, Dave Aranda and Ron Roberts, the defensive coordinator, did a lot with Bernard. And that's what's exciting because this translates 100% to what the Bills do, right? Schematically, Anthony, doesn't it? It's something we talk about almost every week in the film room.
I would say if we did like a cover 1 film room bingo, like simulated pressures and creeper pressures would be like up there big time. And like you said, it's just such a beautiful way to create the matchup you want. And at the same time, because you're only rushing 4, it's kind of like a safe pressure because you're still able to drop 7, but you're also able to manipulate the pass protection in front of you and play games. It's a real creative way to get pressure, but stay safe and maintain coverage. And in today's NFL, that is king, being able to generate pressure with as minimal amount of bodies as you can while still being able to play coverage with as many bodies as you can. It's a real winning formula, and the Bills have used it quite successfully over the last several years.
Yeah, and this is, again, Ron Roberts, defensive coordinator for Baylor, getting a matchup for his linebacker, Bernard. So you see that you have one of the Mike linebacker, number 5, mugging this A-gap right here. And so with 5 possible guys along the line of scrimmage that could rush, the offensive line has to call a protection. And again, you're going to have a running back also kind of inserting that protection. Well, with 5 guys near the line of scrimmage, they call that protection. And what happens post-snap? This guy drops out, the Mike drops out, this edge defender drops out, and they're sending 4 still. So there's still 4 coming, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And so there's still 4 guys coming, and they're not sacrificing coverage on the back end. Well, look what happens to the center. So he's thinking, hey, I probably got to pick him up. I have 5-0 protection right here. That's probably what it's going to look like. And then you have your 6th guy right here as the running back. Well, with those guys dropping out, look what happens. Center's looking back. Now he's looking to his left. This guy slants inside. Well, now you just got, 2 guys occupied on one, which means this running back's coming for Bernard. And one thing with Bernard is I really like his physicality when he comes. Yeah. When he brings, when he rushes the quarterback, he brings the pain. Look at him come full bore at this running back. The guard tries peeling off at the last second. Watch what happens to that guy. He gets put on his ass. Bernard runs right through the line of scrimmage and forces that quarterback to panic and throw it away. So this was one way that, the defensive coordinator for the Bears got Bernard matched up with a running back, and it's something that he excelled at with Kendall at Baylor.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Getting him matched up on a running back, absolute nightmare for offenses. You don't want that with the level of energy and tenacity that this dude rushes with. You don't want to see him one-on-one with a running back. And Aranda talked about it, or whoever he was talking about in that clip talked about it. The linebacker's at an advantage because he has a running start. He's got the power advantage because he has momentum. That running back is coming with gather steps essentially to go and swallow up the linebacker. There's really no other way to do it. You can't just full force as a running back go at that linebacker. So you have to be really sound with how you're taking your angles. And Bernard just beats him with physicality to the point. And I mean, you see it with 75 just trying to peel off last second on that block. And I'm so glad we included this clip. I mean, it encapsulates his energy and his tenacity as a blitzer perfectly, because I think there are some areas that he could improve technically as a pass rusher, and you see it in glimpses, but he wins with just pure energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there were several of these clips where he was just killing people, guards, running backs, tackles. He was just putting guys on their ass, left and right, quarterbacks. Yeah. And I'm talking like just like that, kind of rushing from depth, right, guys? Like, he is so good. He's still, he's got that speed where he's able to, you know, be out on the fringe of the box, be out in the slot, and still get home from depth. It's just something that, you know, watching his film, he just put dudes on the turf, play in and play out. So, Anthony, on this play, they use him as a looper. You know, it's basically a 3-man game here off the right side. He's number 26 at the linebacker level. 2 guys standing up, mugging the gaps in front of him. But again, the D coordinator gets him matched up again with a running back, and he just once again wins. Look at the swim move. He's got that natural ability to beat a block, and especially when it comes to running backs. He just changes direction, quick swim move, Anthony. And he's right in the face of the quarterback there. And this was from a few years ago. So he's definitely excelled and improved in this area. But, man, he rarely lost versus running backs.
Yeah, for sure. His blitzing ability is my favorite thing about him. You know, you mentioned the improvement. So in 2021, this past year, amongst linebackers with at least 100 pass rush snaps, and there were 48 of them, he was tied for 5th in pressures. He was tied for 8th in sacks. He was 2nd in QB hits, and he was 5th in Pro Football Focus's PRP, which is their metric that measures pressures relative to how many times you rush the passer. And it's because of that physicality. It's because of that speed. And like you showed on the previous play, right, where he just detonates against Texas, that's physicality. That's coming from depth. What's nice about this one against TCU is you see a little more nuance, a little more pass rush technique and plan. This one isn't just, well, I'm going to come full speed and get physical and knock somebody out. This one is, I've got a one-on-one matchup, and boom, I love how you started to highlight it there. You see yes, you see him set this up. It's what I mentioned earlier with how he'll defeat blocks from offensive linemen in the hole with his agility. This time he does it on the running back. He sets it up like a running back, almost like he's trying to run between the running back and the guard. And then he sets it up with his eyes and his shoulder direction. And then, boom, this is the gap I'm coming in. This is where I'm going to rush. Psych. And he just cuts back, and you see a very fluid arm over swim move, continues his path vertically. I think that's what's nice to see too, right? This is a nice athletic play combined with technique. He had a really good RAS score coming out of Baylor, and this is the type of play where you see it because he pulls off a technical move, but there's no loss in athleticism. He just keeps on trucking forward with the fluidity. You see the quarterback dropping back, and he meets the quarterback at the spot, gets him off his spot, and it's a nice job from Baylor scheming up for him, but it's an even better job of him winning this time with some technicality combined with the athleticism. And I think that's the beauty of showing these 2 plays back to back, is because it really showcases his ability to win in multiple ways, which when you look at the numbers and you see the pressure numbers and the blitz numbers, you can understand like, okay, it makes sense that this guy wins a lot because he's been a very successful blitzer in his career.
Yeah, you nailed it, man. Again, that shoulder fake. Look, quarterback's looking right down the barrel, looking right at him. He's coming, got a free run right down Broadway. And I think him looping this way, he almost, like as you said, he sets the quarterback up to think, hey, I'm coming right down, through your running back. And so the quarterback's like, I'm just going to slide a little bit to the right. He has a great sense of where that quarterback's going to step up or even slide to. And he wins not just versus the running back, but really got right into the head of the quarterback on that play. It was just a really nice rush from that.
And also one quick thing on his timing on blitzes and rushes is always really good. And if you notice, look at the timing when he cuts and executes the arm over. Look how perfect the timing is with that defensive tackle right in front of him. Like it's just it's almost like, exactly. Like he uses that pick to his advantage, and he does that a lot. And again, I think that points to something we touched on earlier. The football IQ, the functional intelligence, the processing, his ability to do all that because of how heady of a guy he is, which is something Bean talked about and something that Dave Aranda talked about multiple times.
Right. And here's a play from the Sugar Bowl, a game that he just absolutely balled out. And you're going to see him again on the fringe of the box right here to the bottom of the screen. And he's going to get a matchup with the running back and just wipe him off the earth, like right through him, right to the quarterback. I mean, just overpowers him. And again, this is one of those plays. So you see initially there's 4 down right here, right? There's 4 guys on the line of scrimmage, 2 linebackers at the linebacker level. It doesn't look like anything crazy. 2 safeties deep. Hey, they're just playing coverage. Well, what ends up happening is he comes, and then this guy, he kind of pops out underneath. So again, there's only 4 guys coming here, but because they knew the protection they were going to see as Ole Miss kind of slides this way, that forces this running back after that play fake to come up here and seal that edge. And he's just not up to the task, as you'll see from the end zone angle. Bernard goes right through that running back en route to the quarterback here. Here he is, number 2 off the left side here. Watch him work this running back. So it's obviously, again, he's a matchup linebacker. Like, you can use him as a weapon, as a rusher, not just in coverage like we see with Matt Milano.
Yeah, but I think this play, the thing I love about this play is extrapolating this to the Buffalo Bills and the creeper pressures that the Buffalo Bills can use with Bernard, because you think about like the unsuspecting nature that this play is from a defensive schematic standpoint. Like, Bernard is just a guy kind of sliding over. Actually, if you go back to the sideline view, it looks like the safety is just way off the slot receiver. So it looks like, oh, Bernard's just kind of shuffling over. Maybe he's just going to play coverage on that slot guy. But no, that's when you drop that top rusher and you see Bernard come in as the 4th rusher. And it's that unsuspecting nature of, you're just assuming it's a vanilla 4-man rush. Those 4 guys down are rushing. They drop one out. One guy comes in. It's Bernard. And you get him matched up one-on-one versus a running back. And that is the exciting thing, because we have shown it, 3 plays in a row now. This dude is a nightmare if he's one-on-one with a running back. You don't want to see that as an offensive mind.
Yeah, he creates chaos, right, Anthony?
Yeah, I feel real bad for this running back. He just detonates on him. This isn't even a detonation. He just runs through him en route to the quarterback. Like this, I always hated picking up blitzing linebackers like this as a running back, because I felt like so many times, like as the running back, you're the nail and the linebacker is the hammer. Yep. Yeah. And you're 1,000% at that disadvantage, which is why your technique has to be on point. And if your technique isn't like this running back, and if you're undersized like this running back, look at how the leverage again, like this running back gets lower and Bernard just chucks right through him. And this is what you don't want ever as a running back in pass protection. You get ran through. You're not able to brace. You're not able to lock out. He just gets driven back. This one isn't sexy. This one isn't technical. This is just, I'm coming with momentum. I'm bigger than you. I'm nastier than you. And I'm going to run right through you and destroy this entire play. And there's nothing you can do about it. And those type of plays, those are the ones that suck. Those are the ones that snatch your soul. Like if you get beat on technique, it's like, all right, cool. Like I got to sharpen up my technique. Yeah. When someone runs through you and just dominates you like that, that takes your soul. Like it's just, like that's violence, and it's controlled violence, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, I like him as a rusher. He's gonna be a nice little weapon, whether it's this year or next year.
Erik, would you say blitzing is his best attribute?
Oh man, I'd say right now, yeah. I'd say that's by a slim margin though, because I really like his processing and pattern matching coverage, which we will get to. But I'd say at this last season, it was plays like that where they used him so often, which is why his pressure numbers just skyrocketed compared to prior years. And you're going to see another one here. Again, look, there's 5 guys up near the line of scrimmage. They're trying to dictate and get the offensive line to set that protection. And once again, you get like a little slide protection. You get the running back coming across the formation to seal that edge. And he is just physical. He just runs right through that guy. But again, like, yes, he's coming 100%. He's 100 miles an hour. He's coming right at that running back, but watch his hands. Like he's leading with his hands. And so he's transitioning from speed to power, which is pretty special. When you think about it from his perspective and being undersized, like look at him just take that speed and then from the ground up, generate it into power to push that guy back, to disengage, and then to go ahead and bring down the quarterback for the sack.
You said it. From the ground up piece is what really gets me about this one. You see him as he's about to make contact with this running back. You see him start to drop his hips a little bit, and then you can see the power transition literally come from his lower body through his hips into his upper body, through his arms. Boom, makes the contact, extends. He's not just coming like a bat out of hell or bull in a china shop. Like, there is controlled physicality to it. There is a transference of weight. There's a transference of power, much like a batter in the batter's box in baseball. You have to transfer that power as you make your swing. He does that here in his rush, and he's able to transfer it from the ground up through his hands. And you see the physicality, and then you see the technique. And again, you see that processing. He forces the quarterback up, quickly disengages, uses his hands, stays clean, and gets to the QB and brings him down. Another nice rush, but this time in a different way, showcasing a different ability to win, which goes into that matchup piece and that versatility piece, because not only can you create matchups with him and take advantage of matchups, but he can win in different ways when offenses try to counteract what he's trying to do.
Yeah, I just love him. Yeah, like you said, as a rusher, he's definitely very skilled and very natural. Again, he knows how protections are set up. He understands his rule as a rusher and how to either add on as a green dog blitzer, add on as a hug rusher, different ways of going from, hey, I got this running back in man coverage to, oh, no, he's staying in the block, I can rush. Like, he's got that trigger. You saw him fire his gun as in a run defense, but he also has it as a pass rusher. But the other part of his game that I think is going to translate very well is in coverage. And again, from the shoulders up, his ability to process plays here. And so let me break this down. You see a 3-by-1 set here to the bottom of the screen. You got the trips. And right here, you got man-to-man coverage. So that's pretty much eliminated, all right, from the 3-by-1 formula here. But you see the other two wide receivers, they are going to be matched up with these three defenders. So these three defenders of Baylor are a 3-over-2. They have to pattern match these two wide receivers. And just watch how it's almost like you can see Bernard, who's right here. You can see him go through that process. So on the snap right here, watch the number 3 receiver. He basically runs a little diagonal, a little out route. So he's right here. So Bernard's like looking at him. He's like, okay, he's running out. I'm letting him go. So Petrie is going to go ahead and take that out route because, again, these guys are manned up. So don't even think they're there right now. So Bernard's like, all right, the guy's running diagonal. He's going to the flats. I need to get my eyes on the next threat. The next threat is, boom, this guy running an A-breaking route. And as he does that, this is one thing that Bernard is so good at, and Dave Aranda had mentioned it in one of his pressers. He's so good at understanding where his help is. And on this play, he's got a safety over the top. Again, it's more of a split field look, right? So he's got two safeties, one over the top of him. So he understands, like, I don't need to just run right up into his pocket. No, I can just trail him underneath. Because think about where the quarterback is. Again, near the 15-yard line. That guy's got to make that. If he's going to make the throw to this end-breaking route, it's going to be a tough one through a tight window.
Leverage the space.
Yeah, so look at him leverage that, flip his hips, get his eyes back on the quarterback. Now they have this guy perfectly bracketed. And obviously the quarterback goes somewhere else with it. But that type of processing in pass coverage for a college player, that type of pattern matching is pretty special for a linebacker.
Yeah, that's what's so encouraging about him, because he does offer all three areas of at least sufficiency. Like you said, that's what makes you a triple threat. You are at least sufficient in all three areas, and you have potential to get better. The way he processed this play was just special. You can see him on that third receiver. You can see him process, okay, he's breaking out. If he's breaking in, I'll take him. But he breaks out, and you can see him immediately. His eyes change to that next man. And that's something personally, like you said, I love it about Bernard. His head is always on a swivel. You can always see him looking for the next threat and pass coverage. And then he has the athleticism, like you said, to decrease that separation, because there was some separation there on the dig at the top of that route, but he shortens that separation. He gets underneath it. And like you mentioned, Erik, he doesn't get right up into the body of the guy. He just needs to take away the window. That's all he needs to do.
Anthony, you have anything to add on this play? I know we're such junkies for this pattern matching. We talk about it every day when it comes to the Bills defense. It's really at the root of their coverage system. It's vision based.
Yes.
And it's not the type of system that is, again, it's more zone-based coverage, pattern matching, but and it gives the corners and safeties the leeway to jump plays. But this type of pattern matching for a college player, man, it just it geeks us out.
It really is like next level for a college player. And you hit the point that I really wanted to drive home. This is something we see from the Bills. We see pattern matching regularly. It's not just enough to be able to man cover or zone cover. Like, you have to be able to pattern match. And that requires the functional athleticism, the execution physically, but it also requires the mental piece, the recognition. And to be able to, this clip is so beautiful because, like you guys mentioned, you literally can see him process it. You can see him read from 1 to 2 to 3, and then his ability to choke that window and know, like, okay, this is the coverage that we're in. This is what I need to do to influence this route and take this away. It's live intelligence right there, reactive, live in the moment. And it just, again, it ticks multiple boxes that we continue to see from him in multiple strengths. And the key, again, is that it's translatable to what the Bills do, because this is why he's a scheme fit. This is why his skill set fits in with what the Bills do.
Yeah, and here's a different type of technique, but it's one that the Bills use. So you could see that the offense is in 12 personnel. They got 2 tight ends right here, right? And a running back in the backfield. So they have 3 eligibles into the boundary. The formation is into the boundary to the bottom of the screen. And really, Baylor has man coverage. So Bernard is right here. He likely has a running back in man coverage. You see the Mike on the tight end here, and then Jalen Petrie right here on that tight end. So it looks like man coverage, especially to the top of the screen. But watch what happens as they release. And this is what the Bills call a push technique. So on the snap, you're going to see this running back release out wide. So he's releasing. Generally, the rule is if this running back releases outside the tackle, he's going to call a push. Bernard calls a push. Matt Milano, Tremaine Edmonds will call a push. And why do they do that? Because when this guy's running either an out route or a wheel route, you don't want your linebacker, Bernard, running through all this traffic and maybe even these rubs being set right here. You don't want him to get out leveraged, right? So what they do is they call a push. So what Bernard is calling here, he's saying, okay, running back's exiting wide outside the tackle. I'm pushing him to you guys, to the Mike linebacker, and then even the Petrie, depending on that. And this play, again, this is pretty special at the college level. So running back is pushed to the linebacker and Petrie. So what does Bernard have to do? He's got to find the next threat. He's got to find the tight end because, again, he was pushed. He pushed the running back out. So now he matches up with the tight end that's running the corner route. And this is just a simple spout route. You saw the one tight end curl. You see the corner route here, and then just kind of a diagonal route there. It's a 3-level passing concept that should get leverage on man-to-man coverage. But because of that push call and because you see Bernard close that window, that corner route is taken away, and the pass rush is able to get home for the sack. So a push technique is something that the Bills use a bunch, and Bernard, under Ron Roberts and Dave Aranda, learned it from some of the best in the game.
Yeah, we've seen this, Erik, like you mentioned, so much from Milano and Edmonds. It's necessary in football today at the college level, and especially in the NFL, where offenses have become so adept at figuring out ways to out-leverage defenders in a variety of ways. And if you don't use these push calls like this in this instance, it's easy for you to get out-leveraged quick. If that corner doesn't pick up that running back, it's going to be tough for Bernard to sift through that trash, even though Bernard's good at it. And it's an easy way to create some yards and potential yards after catch opportunity. This end zone angle is real beautiful because it's not the best route from that tight end. He kind of rounds it out and it's a bit lazy. And because Bernard's coverage ability is so good, watch him just seamlessly fit underneath this tight end, that number 19 tight end. There was nowhere for this quarterback to go as he's eyeing him. That's where he's trying to go. Perfectly bracketed. And that's a huge piece, right? You need to be able to work in tandem with your peers. And much like we saw on that clip, the play before, where Bernard just seamlessly fits in underneath, he does it once again. That's the encouraging part. He knows what the coverage responsibilities are of his teammates. He knows what his role is. He knows how to do Bill's buzzword here. He knows how to do his 1/11th. He doesn't over pursue. He doesn't overcommit. He doesn't take a poor angle. He connects all of those dots, stays underneath. There's absolutely nowhere for this quarterback to go. He can't fit it over the top and drop it in the hole. There's nowhere to go. If he throws the ball, it's going to get picked, and it allows the Baylor front to be able to attack and get up front, which is another piece, right, where part of the reason the Bills front four this past year wasn't able to get home, there were times where the quarterbacks had outlets. they rather go, oh, here, I can dump it down and check it here, or this guy's open here. When you've got passing windows that are this choked and are this suffocated, you either force it into those tight windows and hope and pray, or you hold on to it a split second too long and you get sacked.
Yeah, and Kendall, here's another play where he can undercut, these over routes. It's something that every offense is running now, these deep over routes. Mm-hmm. And again, he's just able to match and process these routes so well. So he's not even lined up in the slide. He's on the fringe of the box right there, again, just in case a run does happen. And he's able to just mirror this route over the middle, this deep over, and it's a route that really works, especially when you're talking middle of the field open, when two safeties are high, especially when this safety's worried, not even looking, in the middle of the field. So this play is there, but look at the angle he takes on this play, Kendall. And then again, he doesn't panic. And this is one thing I talked about with you guys, is the Bills playing their quarters coverage. Like with a guy like Bernard in there and those 3 linebacker sets, they can still play their quarters coverage, but more of a man match quarters coverage where, Milano, the outside linebacker, or Bernard, the outside linebacker, can match these slot routes, especially these deep overs, because they know where their help is and they're able to naturally close these windows. And on this play, he not only is able to match his bender route, but he's able to break the pass up at the catch point, Kendall.
Right. So I like how it's really a processing play through and through, but then he shows the athleticism on the back end. You can see him eyeing the run fake from the start. He doesn't commit to that slot receiver until he has to. He sees the run is not a threat. And then once he identifies that, he then puts his head on a swivel, as he does so well consistently. And then he, like you said, puts that angle to the over route and takes it away seamlessly. Something I love from him, though, is while he keeps his head on a swivel, he has no fear in terms of turning his back to the quarterback. He is so confident in his athleticism to pattern match. In that way, you can see him turn his head to the quarterback, turn his back to the quarterback, and then flip around with his hips to get in front of this ball and ultimately get his hand in there to make a play on the football. He's just so heady in the way that he's going to attack the game from the first level, the second level, and even here at the third level. And that's what's so intriguing with a guy like Terrel Bernard. He has so much upside because of how well he's already processing the game.
Yeah, Anthony, and we talked about this too, like right around the Tampa Bay game last year, the Bills, a few of the Bills players said they had to kind of change their quarters coverage because, of course, Dane Jackson was in there with Levi as the starting corners, and they really couldn't totally, play cover 2-man. They couldn't play their normal quarters coverage, zone-based quarters coverage. So what they were doing was, to Taron Johnson's side, they were doing man-to-man coverage. But then the backside, they were doing more of zone, or basically like quarter half with the corner safety there. With a guy like Bernard, man, you can play 2-man. If he's in there as that third linebacker, you could play your normal quarters coverage. But he's just got that ability to shave angles and close those passing lanes, as you see here, and really could, again, to your rock, paper, scissors analogy, really just give them a lot more diversity in their coverages.
Yeah, that's a huge piece. I mentioned something last week too, in reference to Kaiir Elam on disguise coverage, that his potential allows from the Bills to be able to select from more of the menu. And Terrel Bernard has that same potential upside as well, in that rock, paper, scissors vein. Like you don't have to be as predictable. You don't have to give away as much tendency, because Erik, if you're an offensive team, at some point, teams down the stretch are going to start to realize, wait a minute. You see them playing more man. They're playing man to man on Taron Johnson's side. You see them. Okay, boom. And if your offense, if your opponent is diagnosing that and they're able to see that, you become predictable. They know how to attack you. They know how to exploit you. Bernard's ability, like we mentioned earlier, and Erik, like you just said, it gives them that ability to continue to play rock, paper, scissors, to stay fluid, to be able to throw multiple things out there, to not be locked into a limited amount of coverages or possibilities or potential. And when there's more of the menu available, you're more unpredictable and it's harder to exploit if you're an offense.
Yeah, and so this is the last coverage play here, and more of a zone coverage. You see him in the middle of the field versus this 2x2 set, and this is more of your typical zone coverage, but I just want you to watch the process, because it's something with him. Again, you can see step by step him checking off his checklist. So the ball snapped, and he immediately looks to the field. He looks out to this number 2 wide receiver, kind of evaluates what's happening there. He's got 2 guys helping over there. And so once he gets to the depth, he flips his hips, then gets his eyes on the quarterback, as you'll see from the end zone angle. And then he's like, okay, where's the next threat? And this is something he does so well. He cycles through the threats. He doesn't guard grass, as they say. He finds that threat, and he takes this guy right away. Quarterback looks right at him, ends up having to extend the play. And so now it's like, okay, you're in scramble mode. You start to plaster down. Look, he senses. He's not even looking at the guy. He senses that, hey, this guy's obviously going to come across the field into the boundary. He does that, and the quarterback panics and checks it down to this running back. And, Bernard's just in the right spot at the right time. And that's something when you're doing your job, when you're doing your 111th, things like this are going to happen. The ball's going to bounce in your direction. When you go through your process in coverage and zone coverage, again, looking to his left, peeking at the quarterback, flipping his hips, eliminating that guy over the middle. You see the quarterback right there looking at him, takes it away. Okay, now we're in the scramble drill, in the right place at the right time. Interception from Bernard. It's just with him, he's so assignment oriented and detail oriented that things like this happen.
That's literally what I have in my notes. He's so detail oriented. That's why he's in the right place at the right time. It's funny that those guys who are, consistently in the right place in the right time are those people who process a certain way, who are always around the ball, who always fly in the right direction and are just, again, it seems like it's right place, right time. Man, what a lucky play, but it's not luck when it happens consistently. This is another one similar to that play versus Texas earlier. You're able to watch him literally, like you can see him go from 1 to 2, read the quarterback, read the space. I love that he's not just spot dropping and he's like, okay, well, here's my zone that I'm supposed to guard and I'm here. So let me just stand and stare at the quarterback, head on a swivel, constantly trying to be aware, constantly diagnosing, constantly processing. And then boom, you get the attack. 38 comes up and flies up on the running back. Bernard feels his man, flows with him. You see the rest of the defense flow as well. And he gets an opportunity because the ball gets tipped up in the air. And then nice athleticism, too, to be able to make this interception and then get some yards on it. Nice hands catch and the ability to get upfield. But again, it's tied to his athleticism overall and the physical ability to be able to flip those hips, sink, drop, drive, click. But it's that heady piece. It's that mental piece. And that's a nice weapon when you have somebody on defense who's able to read and react in real time and be able to connect it with the physical. That's something who I'm not making this comparison at all. But Luke Kuechly, one of the things that I loved so much about his game was that mental side. You would hear some of those behind the scenes things or plays on the sideline or him talking in the huddle and his ability to process and diagnose and read things post snap and then talk about them pre-snap and connect it all. It's part of what made him so great. And there's a lot of intangible, instinctual pieces to Bernard's game that flash in a variety of ways. And I think that's part of the reason why, his upside is potentially there because of what he's got going on between the years.
Yeah. And, that was, I think, 10 or 11 plays. And honestly, we had I think I loaded 108 or 110.
109.
So I put these guys to work this week. But again, he was a guy I always talk about during draft time, like, hey, who are the guys that not just draft crushes, but guys that, hey, you turn on their film, you watch your 4 to 6 games or whatever to get a good sample. But then you're like, oh, his tape was so good. I want to watch more. He was one of those guys after the fact. I didn't do much work on him prior to the draft, but once they selected him, I went back and I was like, oh, I see why they like him. And then I could project him more. When you watch some of his traits, you can project him more into the Bills defense. And so when we're talking projection, guys, I know we kind of talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the show. We're getting a lot of things on social media and YouTube about, hey, don't be surprised if he takes Edmonds' spot on third downs and passing situations. Don't be surprised if he's the big nickel, which I think is a valid point. And so I want to start with that. Initially, I didn't think he would be the type of guy that would be put on the perimeter in the slot a lot as that big nickel. But, after watching some of his film and some of his traits and how he projects into the Bills defense and what he did at Baylor, I could see that role being where he does start. Again, we'll just call it base defense. We honestly don't have to call it Buffalo nickel because he's actually a linebacker. So, if you look at his snaps and just to compare him to Milano and Shaq Thompson, so his snaps, Bernard's snaps over the course of his career, he had 2,279 snaps. 1,952 of those were in the box. and 239 snaps were as a slot defender. So only 12% of his snaps were on the perimeter as a slot defender, as you saw a couple of those plays over the course of his career at Baylor. So Milano, that's kind of where he lived at BC, especially in Don Brown's defense. Like 1,633 of his snaps overall in his career, 603 of those were in the box, but 547 of those snaps were in the slot. So 33% of his snaps in college were from that slot position. Now, let's go back a little further to Shaq Thompson. At Washington, he had 773 snaps. So not many snaps, but 550 of those were in the box. Only 77 were in the slot, so 1%. So I bring these stats up and these reps for these guys when they're coming out of college to ask you guys, like, okay, what role do you see him? Like, at first, I'm like, there's no way Bernard's going to be on the fringe as much as Milano was in college, or early on, even as a third linebacker, because they kind of eased him in early on in his career with the Bills. So where do you see him? Could he project as that big nickel, as you know, the Panthers used Shaq Thompson, who, again, he was only on the perimeter in the slot 1% of the time when he was in college. But those first couple years, he was in the slot a lot, as, again, in their base defense going forward. So, Kendall, I'll start with you. Where do you project him, and do you worry about him as a big nickel?
I definitely do project him more towards that big nickel role, just in a sense to get him on the field, find him snaps, find him ways to get on the field, because I think this dude deserves to find snaps his rookie year, but I don't think he's taking snaps away from Edmonds or Milano to get those snaps. So no. I think Buffalo nickel, big nickel, whatever the hell you want to call it, I think that's the way to get him on the field right away. I will admit I have some concerns in that regard, because I mean, I've seen what I need to see from Milano in coverage to feel confident that he could play that role, but I haven't seen it from Bernard at the NFL level to do that. I like what he does in college. We just showed, like, he's got great processing. He's got enough athleticism to do that pattern matching stuff against slot guys. But if he matches up against like a really shifty slot wide receiver, how is he going to do? If he matches up against a more athletic tight end, how is he going to do?
Which we saw on tape, level. Right, Kendall? Like when he did match up with tight ends in man-to-man coverage, one of his weaknesses was their ability to create separation with athleticism or with just at the break point. You saw it against Oklahoma a few times. Like, that does worry me. And so, yeah, when they chose him, guys, and I was like, big nickel, whatever, base defense, I worry. If I'm going to do that, I'm going to match up Milano versus a tight end. Or
the interesting part is you can now put both of them on the field, and you have that interchangeable quality between the two, where it's like, they split the tight end out to the left, and Milano happens to be out on the left. Okay, he's the big nickel.
Yeah, you don't have to trade. So if the tight end trades to the other side of the field, you don't have to have him follow, which Milano did a lot in college, especially like going back to when they played Clemson and Jordan Leggett. Like, he would travel with the tight end. Shaq Thompson would travel with the tight end.
Doesn't have to.
You're right. You don't have to do that. And so then that kind of disguises what? Those man-to-man tendencies where offenses are trying to shift to show that
disguises coverage.
Yeah, exactly. So, Anthony, I mean, right up your alley, man. Like that, you're right. It's interchangeable, right?
Yeah, that's the huge piece there that Kendall hit on and you hit on as well. You're not handcuffed. You're not pigeonholed into being like, oh, well, they did this thing, so we have to take this guy who can only do that because this other guy can't. Actually, not even because it's not even because well, Milano's so good at it. It's mainly because, oh, well, we have to because there aren't any other options. Now you have options. More of that menu is still available to you. And I think that's, really where we start to see him get used. I think, again, because everything is projection and we haven't seen any of these guys take a single down or real live snap against NFL talent, you start to get their feet wet a little bit and see what I think for Bernard, seeing what he looks like against those heavier packages and going more base. As Kendall mentioned, several of the teams the Bills are going to face in 2022, there are some opportunities for him to get on the field if the Bills want to use 3 linebacker sets, because they're going to play several teams that, 1, like to run the ball, and 2, like to use multiple tight end sets. And when you've got a third linebacker option who can fit the run, who is a dog in the box, much like Matt Milano is, but who also offers you some coverage versatility. And again, there's not that huge drop off in discrepancy from Taron Johnson to AJ Klein, or even when the Bills won 3 linebacker sets last year, there's not that huge drop off from Milano to AJ Klein. Is Milano the superior coverage guy? Yes. Is Taron Johnson? Yes. But you've got a versatile player in Terrel Bernard who allows you to continue to match up and not give away things to the offense and to continue to stay multiple. And I think that's where we start to see him get used. There was a question in the chat earlier as well about like what snap percentage do you see, or what do you foresee him in terms of charting his rookie year as a success. And I think it's, if they can use him as a chess piece against those heavier personnel and heavier package teams like they did last year with Klein, and see him function and live in both worlds and defend the run and play coverage, I think that's how we judge his rookie year. And it's all about him being able to get onto the field and increase that versatility.
Yeah, and he's, we also got to talk about, like, yes, they're going to be matching personnel probably a little more because they have some pieces to do that a little more now. They don't just have to play their template, their blueprint that they have for the last few years. They have more diversity in their skill set and talent at those positions that you need it: corner, linebacker, and even as pass rushers, guys that could rush the passer or just drop out. Specifically like Von Miller, because he has the athleticism to drop out and not just rush all the time. But obviously that's not what they're paying him for, but that still adds that, hey, is he coming in or is he going and dropping into coverage, skill set. So I do think that, yes, the game plan, it's going to be game plan specific. They're not going to just be like, okay, we're going to be in base all the time. It's going to be game plans specific. So as far as like percentages and snap percentages, who knows? Especially once some of these offenses get going in the regular season. So we'll see. But I do expect how much they invested in him in that 3rd round pick, and where he's coming from, his football IQ, some of the traits that you saw and talent that he has. I could see them carving out a role for him, just in totality. That I think he does have the ability to get on the field early and make some of those splash plays. And some have some of those bumps in the road, as we expect from young players, especially first-year players. But I don't think they're just going to throw him to the wolves. They'll ease him in just like every other rookie.
Yeah, that's the big piece, right? The easing him in like they have other rookies, like they did. Even with Gregory Rousseau, like you saw his snaps increase, but you saw what role they had carved out for him. And we saw what they've done with AJ Epinesa and other rookies in the past in terms of getting their feet wet and allowing them to pick more things up as they go throughout the year, to be able to really make sure they're comfortable and make sure they're able to get properly acclimated and go forward. And like Ron says there, I think Bernard will be brought along slowly, just like Milano was, but by midseason, Bernard will see the field more. And Erik, I think you were spot on. I think it's going to be not that he's matchup dependent, but it's going to be based on the game plan for that week. Okay, what team are we playing? What percentage do they live in? What personnel groupings? What do they like to run out of those personnel groupings? Okay, now we've got somebody who can maybe fight fire with fire a little bit and match up well, given the personnel usage and personnel groupings and types of things that their opponents are going to use. And I think that's part of the fun of what Terrel Bernard is, similar with several of the other picks the Bills have had this year on offense and defense in the draft. The Bills have gone for a more versatile approach, this rock, paper, scissors philosophy. I can tell that Bean was listening to me all offseason, so I'm pretty flattered. Pat myself on the back for that one. I could tell that he was like, Anthony gets it. We need more rock, paper, scissors. Let's do it. But no, it's fun and exciting. And he's a guy who I'm very excited to watch come training camp and come the preseason. I really want to see how he progresses at the NFL level, because like we've diagnosed and diagrammed in this episode, he really has something to offer. And if he can stay healthy and continue to connect those dots with his skill set and his traits in this scheme fit, a lot of potential positivity for Mr. Terrel Bernard, and someone to keep an eye on this offseason and going into the preseason and the regular season. And that, for us here at the Cover One Film Room, will do it for us tonight. Oh, another nice crisp episode, under an hour and 10. Who are we? Look at us. Look at us. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? We appreciate everybody joining us tonight. The chat was great. The engagement was great. The questions, the thoughts, the feedback. As always, we're tremendously appreciative of you guys, and we're tremendously appreciative of you guys being tremendously appreciative of us. If you are here live right now, please drop a like on this episode here on YouTube. If you are listening on any one of the podcasting apps or platforms, or watching on YouTube later, please drop a like, a rate, a review, a subscription to the Cover One Film Room Also, subscribe to the Cover One channel as a whole. We have you covered every single night for anything and everything you want and need. Buffalo Bills and also football in general. We make you smarter as a football fan. We make you smarter about the thing that you love. Thank you very much for joining us live tonight. If you didn't, thank you very much for your view, your listen, your download later, whatever have you. We hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well, staying safe. Take care of one another. Be kind to one another. We will see you next week for another episode of the Cover One Film Room. And for myself, Anthony Prohaska, Mr. Erik Turner, Mr. Kendall Mirsky, this has been another episode of the Cover One Film Room. Take care, everyone. And as always, go Bills.